Space Jam 2. It's an easy punchline. Space Jam is a ridiculous movie about Michael Jordan teaming up with the Looney Tunes to play basketball against aliens. And now it's getting a sequel, in the tradition of intellectual properties that can be sold back to the nostalgic adults who watch them as kids at the same time as selling it to their kids. But I think Space Jam 2, or as it's recently been titled, Space Jam: A New Legacy, but screw that title, it's Space Jam 2, is going to be something special. But why would I think that? It's Space Jam 2. Well, firstly, Space Jam was made in the days before theatrical 2D animation suddenly died. Space Jam and its sequel, Looney Tunes Back in Action, are both made with traditional animation, which makes them stand out, not just next to the other live-action animated movies of the time, like Rocky and Bullwinkle or Garfield, but next to the 3D animation of today. By all accounts, it seems like Space Jam 2 is going to be a return to 2D animation. And it's the first Looney Tunes project that Industrial Light and Magic have worked on since Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So, in an era when movies like Klaus are a delectable return to form, a 2D animated Space Jam 2 could be a major step back into the spotlight for the medium. And speaking of Roger Rabbit, Robert Zemeckis, who directed it, is now working on a spiritual successor with Looney Tunes characters called Tuned Out. Reed, he tried to make a Roger Rabbit sequel, couldn't get to work with Disney, and is now making it in everything but name at Warner, with the understanding that we all know this is for fans of Roger Rabbit. Point being, we know that they've been playing with 2D animated Looney Tunes in live action again. But the method of the animation can only take you so far. It's the style that matters, the skill with which the classic Looney Tunes style is replicated. Hell, even Space Jam didn't nail it. Back in Action was much better animated. So why should I think that Space Jam 2 is going to be any different? Well, if you hadn't heard, a new series of animated shorts premieres on HBO Max this month called Looney Tunes Cartoons. Unlike the Looney Tunes show, which aired between 2011 and 2014, or New Looney Tunes, which premiered in 2015 and ended last January, Looney Tunes Cartoons is an attempt to recapture the style of the early classic Looney Tunes shorts. No character redesigns, no new formats, no Lunatics Unleashed or Looney Tunes Babies. They basically backlash-proofed it. But I think it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, the first original serialized Looney Tunes project to completely recreate the style and format of the old cartoons. Like, ever. And it does it really well. The animation looks really fluid and loose compared to some of the more recent releases.
Just loosen up a bit, okay? Loosen up a bit.
I'm loose.
Okay, I just want you to be loose, okay?
I'm loose!
And the gags are in the same spirit as the originals. If this is what the HBO streaming service Looney Tunes looks like, it's a safe bet that Space Jam 2's animation will be held to a pretty high standard. One feature of this new show that we know for sure will be in Space Jam 2 is Eric Bauza. Eric Bauza voices Bugs Bunny, among others, in Looney Tunes cartoons, and will be reprising the same roles in Space Jam 2.
Games, prizes, food high in saturated fat. This place isn't kidding around. I am amused!
His Bugs voice is pretty much spot on. He's especially good at recreating the way Mel Blanc yells.
So it's mechanical! The moisturizer!
I'll steal it!
And what's kind of insane to me is that this is the first time he's ever voiced Bugs Bunny officially. New blood. New Canadian blood. You got this, Eric Bauza. I believe in you. But all this does speak to a common Warner Brothers practice of maintaining the quote-unquote good old days in straight-to-video and TV projects. You see it with Batman in the form of reviving Bruce Timm's style from the 90s, as well as recapturing the 60s with the Adam West Burt Ward animated movies. But there's also the Tom and Jerry videos, which are very retro, and Scooby-Doo, also returning to the perceived golden ages of the 60s and 90s at once with Scooby-Doo and Guess Who and Return to Zombie Island. This doesn't exactly line up with how the major Scooby-Doo movies and TV shows have gone out of their way to feel modern and new.
Apparently he's been stealing Netflix by using his mother's account.
That is not fair for the rest of us who have to pay for Netflix.
You have to pay for Netflix?
That is, until you realize that while they're making this, they're still selling this. So if anybody reacts to this with they should have made it like Zombie Island, Warner's like, hey, over here, come buy this. They know how supply and demand works. That way they can sell the new thing to a wider audience and the throwback thing to people who resent it. Money from the new fans, money from the old fans. Money, 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 yummy, yummy, yummy. So why should I think Looney Tunes Cartoons is setting the groundwork for Space Jam 2 rather than preempting demand for how it used to be? Because Space Jam does not exist as a brand outside of nostalgia for the 90s. There is no modern Space Jam, because there is no modern mania for basketball, and there is no modern zeitgeist presence for Looney Tunes. And finally, I have a theory as to what they might be planning with Space Jam 2. Warner Brothers has a habit lately of making use of all the intellectual properties at their disposal just because they can. They do this a lot. There's Ready Player One, which flexes all of them pretty hard, but then there's also a series of frankly needless cameos in the Lego Batman movie that throw in characters from Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, The Wizard of Oz, Doctor Who, King Kong, The Matrix, you get the idea. The other LEGO movies do this. Scoob is making use of old Hanna-Barbera characters that I'm not entirely sure anyone remembers. Teen Titans Go to the Movies had free reign to use DC characters. LEGO Dimensions was a Warner Brothers project that heavily focused on using familiar properties. What I'm saying is, Warner Brothers loves to show you all the toys they have to play with. And we already know Space Jam 2 will be no different. Leaked set photos revealed live-action cameos from The Mask, the Joker, the Wicked Witch of the West, Pennywise, and Voldemort. So, just as nonsensical as when the Lego Batman movie did it. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. If they're doing this, and they know what they're doing, then look at it this way. Space Jam is about cartoons playing basketball. It doesn't have to just be Looney Tunes. Here are some of the other cartoons Warner Brothers has the rights to. MGM, which includes Tom and Jerry, Droopy, Woody Woodpecker, all of Hanna-Barbera, which includes Scooby-Doo, The Flintstones, The Jetsons, Yogi Bear, Johnny Quest, all of Cartoon Network, which includes Adventure Time, Gumball, Steven Universe, Regular Show, Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, Teen Titans, Ed, Edd and Eddy, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Samurai Jack, Codename Kids Next Door, Johnny Bravo, Ben 10, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, OKKO, Craig of the Creek, Flapjack, Uncle Grandpa, Over the Garden Wall, and Adult Swim, which is less well suited to a family movie, but hey, Pennywise is here, so that doesn't make me expect a Rick and Morty cameo any less. Rooster Teeth, which adds Ruby. Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, Freakazoid, The Iron Giant, Batman the Animated Series, Max Fleischer's Superman, Cats Don't Dance, Osmosis Jones, fuck it, and Watership Down. I didn't think I'd end up in the timeline where I'm talking about the characters from Watership Down appearing in the sequel to Space Jam, but here we are. Plus, Ninja Turtles is a Nickelodeon property that Warner Brothers uses a lot, so who knows what other Nickelodeon characters are on the table. Of course, that's a whole lot of potential cameos, and I don't expect them to do all of them, but if they're putting The Mask in Space Jam 2, and they aren't putting in the Powerpuff Girls and the Crystal Gems, they're crazy. This doesn't just bring the 90s nostalgia through the roof, it brings in cartoon representation that the kids seeing this movie will recognize. Imagine this, a moment towards the end of the movie where the Looney Tunes are on the ropes losing their rematch with the Monstars, and suddenly, a portal opens up behind Bugs' head, Avengers Endgame style. And there behind him is Jake the dog and Finn the human. And just as it's dawning on you what this means, Jake says, "Y'all ready for this?" And suddenly Jock Jams is blasting triumphantly as the greatest all-star lineup of cartoon characters you've ever seen at once starts turning the tide. Picture a long continuous shot with cartoons from clashing styles and eras playing together, dribbling past Monstars and passing to one another. The cartoons of the 90s collaborating with the cartoons of the 60s and the present, and protecting the Earth together through the power of mad hoops and sick dunks. Maybe that's why all the live-action characters we know the movie is using are villains. Team Earth gets cartoon good guys, Team Monstar gets live-action bad guys. As far as scenes like this where Warner Bros. Makes use of all their properties go, if handled right, this could be perfect for uniting the different target demographics at once, and could elevate this from a celebration of the Looney Tunes to a celebration of the entire spectrum of cartoons as a medium. They have the opportunity to make a crossover that is both the appropriate amount of silly and thematically resonant. And even if they don't do any of that, if Warner Brothers forgets they own Cartoon Network, or if there's some other legal obstacle I'm not aware of, and if those live-action cameos we know about are really all there is, it's still a 2D animated Space Jam. That wasn't so extraordinary in 1996, but in 2021, the last theatrical Looney Tunes movie was 18 years ago, and traditional animation is pretty much reserved for art house cinema. Space Jam is decidedly not art house, and to see a sequel release into a completely different animation landscape than the last one did is going to be really interesting. So, if Space Jam: A New Legacy is the surprise hit of summer 2021, don't say I didn't warn you. And if you're here from the future and it sucks, you officially have permission to dunk on me in the comments. Just kidding, please don't. I'm a human being with feelings.